Good evening, viewers, and welcome to this wonderful segment on the Balance Show, Breaking the Glass. It's been a long time. So many people ask me, who is going to be our next guest on the Breaking the Glass show? I once told you that there are a lot of Gambians that are making impact, contributing to national development. Today I will tell you exactly who that person is, but let me just join Tima. She's going to take us through who our guest is going to be on this wonderful segment. Tima, who do we have today?
Thank you so much, Baba. Today we have Morr Secka, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education. And we'll just take you through the biography of Mr. Secka.
Okay.
Morr Secka, BSc Economics, Fura Bay College, Sierra Leone, postgraduate and Masters of Arts, MA in Economics Policy Management from the Institute of Development and Economic Planning in Senegal. He's a cadet economist and rose through the ranks to Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance, Permanent Secretary at Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Economic Planning and Industrial Development, and currently Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Higher Education. Worked as Deputy Managing Director of BSIC Bank, conducted several consultancies in various fields, including trade, investment, development, finance, fisheries, business plans, common external tariffs for ECOWAS, etc. And congratulations for the success of the launching of your book, The Demise, Alternatives and Rebirth of Planning. Thank you.
Perfect. Once again, viewers, welcome to this wonderful program, especially this segment, Breaking the Glass. And of course, we welcome Permanent Secretary, Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Morr Secka. He has been definitely contributing to national development. A big congratulations goes to him for writing such a book that can definitely help a lot of people to gain knowledge, understand what planning is. But he will tell us more as he's right here with us. But before that, I want to take this opportunity to just welcome him. P.S., welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Baba Sisi, and I'm also very much honored to be here with you. And I would also want to say good evening to you all viewers, wherever you are, in the Gambia and outside, and to my family members. Thank you.
All right. Let me tell you the headlines on the book so that you know exactly what the book is all about. The book is called Demise, Alternatives and Rebirth of Planning, the Gambia Experience. Importantly, I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate His Excellency President Adama Barrow for his landmark victory in this past December 4th election. Congratulations, Your Excellency. Now, P.S., we know that we are aware. First, let me congratulate you for successfully launching of your book, The Demise, Alternatives and the Rebirth of course, Planning, the Gambia Experience, at the United Nations Institute of Development and Economic Planning, Dakar. Now, this book was launched in Dakar. Tell us more in detail what this book is all about.
Yeah, it took me some 10, 12 years to write this book.
Wow.
I started writing the book in 2012. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was in Mount Meru Hotel in Tanzania. In fact, the inspiration to write started from that night at that hotel. And the intention was to make sure that there is a legacy left for the youths of the Gambia and, you know, all developing countries in particular, for them to learn about the experience of planning in the Gambia. And the other objective of the book was also to make sure that I document all the major economic occurrences in this country from independence to date. So the book has achieved two outcomes. One is that it has cataloged all the planning, different plans that the Gambia has ever had. But in addition to that, also it has also made mention of all the major economic occurrences of this country.
Exactly. Importantly, I attended the launching that just happened recently in Dakar when it was virtual, and a lot of people were there. There are a lot of dignitaries, well attended. Let me come to this question. Can you tell the viewers why the book was launched in Dakar at the IDEP?
IDEP.
Yes, IDEP. Now, so many people will wonder how comes the book was launched there, because this is the first time in history a Gambian launched his book in that particular institution.
Yes, I am also pleased to answer that question because I was myself a former student of that institute.
Wow.
I got my master's and my postgraduate diploma from that institute. And the fact that this is a planning institute, it is a UN institute that is tasked with building capacity across Africa.
Exactly.
So when we were there as students, we had students all the way from Mauritius. We had people from Kenya, Tanzania, all across Africa.
Yeah.
So it's an institute dedicated to build capacity in planning and other areas. So the institute being intended for capacity building in Africa, and a student from them having written something that is outstanding in terms of planning, they felt that it was their show to showcase the achievement of their students.
Exactly.
Yes, so this is what happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is like to say our product has definitely made us proud.
Yeah.
And you also have made Gambians proud. Let me go back to the book. You choose this name, The Demise, Alternatives, and Rebirth of Planning. Can you explain?
Yes, I know some of you who have been following history will realize that at some point in time, there was what we call Cold War. During this period also, there were competitions in ideology between capitalism, socialism, communism, some form of economic systems.
Yes.
And subsequently, capitalism started dominating. So in most countries now, you have capitalist systems. And then socialism started dying down.
Yes.
So because of that ideological battle, initially most countries adhered to planning, and later on when they wanted to go more into the capitalist trend, they started abandoning planning. So Gambia also fell into that category. We started with a limited form of planning in terms of public investment programs. We call it PIPs. There were 3 PIPs. You had the first, second, and the third PIP, which was followed by the development of the first development plan. This was in the mid-70s, in the mid-70s going towards early 80s. That's the first development plan. Then you had the second development plan up to around 84, 85. But then that was when planning died down. Yeah. So this is why demise came. It existed, and it died down around. Yes, it died down in 1985.
Wow.
Then after in 1985, we had this economic recovery program, which was introduced by the Bretton Woods institutions, particularly the IMF and the World Bank. So from 1985 to 1994, thereabout, you had what you call ERP up to 1990. You had what we call the Program for Sustained Development, PSD, after 1990. And after the Program for Sustained Development, that was when rebirth occurs. So this is why you have demise, alternatives being, it was not planning, but then you had something like, which is the ERP and the Program for Sustained Development.
Became the alternatives.
Yes, those are the alternatives.
Yes.
And then we went back to planning again.
Then it rebirth.
And this rebirth occurred sometime in 1994, temporarily, because we had what we call SPA 1, Strategy for Poverty Alleviation 1. This strategy for poverty alleviation was prepared and taken to Geneva. There was a round table. It was approved by the donors. But shortly after that, you had the 1994 coup. So that discontinued the implementation of the SPA. So in 1996, the new government, which was military government at the time, came up with Vision 2020. And this Vision 2020 is more like a longer-term vision. Wow. But the intention of having a vision is that you then have you then go and break it into medium-term plans. Like in 1996, you have developed a Vision 2020, but you needed medium-term plans that will take you now to 2020.
Wow.
So this is why immediately after 1996, SPA 1 was implemented. After SPA 1, then you had PRSP 1, PRSP 2, PAGE, and now the NDP, which is currently being implemented.
The National Development Program.
National Development Plan. Yes.
Yes. Very importantly, I wanted to make a follow-up question there, which is very important. You've talked about so many things. Planning in general is very important. Now, people that are listening will be hearing the words planning, planning. Take us through why planning is important to economic development.
Yeah, because planning is like you are going to Basse and you have to plan your journey. If you don't plan your journey, it means you will be groping.
Yes.
You don't have one direction. You can go up to somewhere and then you come back. If you plan your journey, you say, okay, I'm leaving from point A to B to C, that there is some continuation.
Yes.
So the essence of planning is that there are people who say that not planning is planning to fail. If you don't plan, it means you are planning to fail. So it's very important, and if you look at most countries, Malaysia, Rwanda in particular, they are signing examples because Malaysia, in case of Malaysia, they have never abandoned planning, even during the difficult times.
Wow.
They had always kept on with their plans. Rwanda is also doing very well because they are also doing exceptionally well in the area of planning. They have a vision, and their vision is divided into medium-term plans, and they are implementing it. And this is why they are also becoming very successful. So it's very important to have a national plan and then to move the country from one level to another level.
Which is important.
Yes.
Now, let's come to they always say, whatever you do, there must be something that motivates you to do it. Let's come to the motivation. What motivates you to write this book?
Yes, like I said, when I was at EDEP, I did some planning programs. I did 3 planning programs to be specific. There was this national, what we call national long-term perspective studies. This is essentially what deals with visions. There was the short-term plans, and then there was what we call regional planning. Regional planning is more like decentralization. That's the area it covers. Now, when I was there, I did a term paper on planning, and I reviewed the planning experience of Gambia at the time. It was the first and second development plan that I reviewed.
Yeah.
So it was out of that I got my inspiration to write, because since then I had always wanted to write on the planning experience of the Gambia, but taking a longer period instead of just concentrating it on first and second development plans. That is one point. The second point is, I think we Gambians also, we don't have the habit of writing our experience. I feel that with the little experience I have gathered, across sectors, if I can develop and write something and leave it behind so that the younger ones can read and benefit from that. So for me, I see it as an inheritance to the younger generation.
Which is important.
My experience that I have penned down for the younger generation. Yes.
Yeah, and there was a point that we will be blaming our forefathers, saying, I wish they wrote these things and leave it for us. But it was just in verbal terms. And
I will not stop there. I will also encourage my colleagues in the service. I mean, wherever you feel that you have relevant experience that you can share, please document it, because otherwise when you go, nobody will be there to benefit from it.
Which is important.
Yes.
What is more important than experience? They said experience is the best knowledge. So he's living his experience in this book. So students, non-students, wherever you are, very important. This book is saying a lot. I've opened this book. I've read through this book, but I was amazed. I was impressed that we have Gambians that can definitely write something that is so much of high importance. that can help us in our planning, that can help us in our development, which is very, very important. So you can imitate that. That's what this show is all about. But before we go to the break, I just want to ask you one last question. When I opened through this book, I saw you started writing from 1965. The book started from 1965 up to date. Let's say at independence, what was the status of Gambian by then?
Yes, you know, it's also funny because when Gambia was seeking for independence, there were doubting Thomases who thought, for instance, that the Gambia cannot be a viable state. It's going to fail. Some even called it the improbable nation. There is a book that is written by Beckley Rice. It's called Enter the Gambia, the Birth of an Improbable Nation. Now, the reason why people were doubting whether Gambia is viable as a state included, among other things, that one, at the time, we were just dependent on one crop, which was groundnut. The population also was about 397,000 people at the time. Then we also, the civil service was dominated by British. In fact, you hardly had Gambians. All the top guys were British. Commerce also was dominated by foreigners entirely. So then the budget also was almost entirely funded by the British government. So it means we were not having domestic resources of our own. So because of all these things, they thought that, for instance, if Britain stopped the support, we will not move anymore. Because the national budget was entirely funded by the British at the time. So because of these, how to call it, characteristics that were not very favorable, people had doubted that the Gambia would make it, even as a state. They thought probably we would have disappeared by now.
P.S., this is a very important, of course, statement that a lot of people will definitely learn from. There are some people probably watching right now will be like, wow, this is amazing. But that's what it is all about. We have to read to understand, to learn, not to argue unnecessarily. But if you read through this book, you will understand so many things that happen, you know, at independence up to date. So from 1965 up to date when it comes to planning. Because without proper planning, you are always bound to fail. That means you've set yourself to fail. If you don't plan, you set yourself to fail. So planning is very important. And he has shared so many references that you will definitely learn. We want to thank you. But let's take this break. When we come back, and then we'll just continue from there.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome back, of course, viewers, wherever you are. Once again, welcome to this program, Breaking the Glass on the Balance Show. Now, of course, we have MoHERST Morr Secka from the Minister of Higher Education. MoHERST, give us a brief on the different plans or its alternatives that the Gambia formulated and implement.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, 1963-64, that was when the first PIP was developed. That's the program for investment, public investment program. That was when it was first developed. The main focus at the time was to make sure that there are reforms in administration and on the social sectors. So it was administrative and social reforms that the first PIP concentrated on. Then came the second PIP, 1967 to 71. And here, the main concentration was to improve rural infrastructure and, of course, increase production of groundnuts. So those were the main focus of the second PIP. Then came the third PIP, 71 to 74. And the intention was to diversify agriculture. You remember, one of the problems I told you at independence was we had one crop.
Yes, which is groundnut.
Yes, so the third PIP concentrated on making sure that now we have cereals introduced. So you had the millets, the rice, and other things. That was when it was introduced in the economy. So then we move on to the first plan. The first plan was more like concentrating on promoting growth and diversity in production. It also touched on rural development and as well as concentrated on building capacity. You also remember I told you that the civil service was dominated by British.
Yes, which, yeah.
Yes, so the PIPs and the first plan concentrated on building capacity so that Gambians can take over the civil service. So, and that effort went also up to the second development plan, which ended around 81. So by 1985, the Gambia had one of the best, 85 to 90, the Gambia had one of the best civil service in Africa. So at least they succeeded also in doing that.
Wow. No, P.S., before you go to the next point,
yes.
that is a point that a lot of people talk about all the time, that there was a moment when Gambia has the best in Africa, that even other countries were copying our civil service. What happened? What happened to that?
You remember when the military takeover happened?
Yes.
Most of the experienced civil service either left or were sacked. So that's where capacity seriously was started to be eroded.
That was in
the country. Yeah, in the country.
Yeah.
But before, we had one of the best civil service in Africa, and there were countries who were coming to Gambia to understudy what we are doing, like what people are doing now in Rwanda. People are traveling all the way to go to Rwanda just to understudy what they are doing.
Yeah.
We were at that level at the time.
Wow.
Yes.
So what you've talked about when of course the military regime came in, a lot of the experienced civil service went. Now, so many people will ask, what are the importance of having the best civil service in the system?
Yeah, of course, there's nothing like having the best manning the key positions in government, because when they are at work, you see dividends. If you meet with other Gambians in some international fora, that's the time you will respect some of them also, because some of them are occupying very high positions in international civil service, and they are doing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So if you have very good and experienced civil servants, of course, that takes the country forward, because at least they will understand how to move from point A to point B, for instance, with their experience, because experience also matters a lot.
Very important.
Yes.
Yes. Lesson learned and conclusion of the book. Can you just take us through those areas?
Okay, I have said that, for instance, we had implemented 3 PIPs, that is public investment programs, and all of them were judged to be very successful, meaning that if the intention was to work on rural communication, they have achieved something in that area.
Yes.
If the intention was to raise rural income, they have also achieved something in that area. Now, the first plan was successfully also implemented. In fact, if you look at the history of planning in the Gambia, plus the alternatives, you would have 2 plans that stand out distinctly as being successfully implemented, and that was the first development plan and PRSP2. And then the alternative, the successful one, will be the ARP to some extent. And I'll dilate on the three. The first development plan was successful because, like PRSP2, it also met all its targets. During that time, the economy was growing, the government's financial position was very strong. The likes of GPMB were making profit to the extent that government was using part of that profit to build its reserves. At some point in time, around in the mid-70s, government had 10 months of import cover.
Wow.
Yes. So, which means that at the time, the reserves were very strong. And this came from the fact that the producer price of groundnuts and the world market price of groundnut all increased. The world market price increased, the government increased the producer price of groundnut, And that trickled down to the farmers, meaning the farmers were getting more income. So in the end, rural income was also increased over time. So that is some of the successes that happened. Even in terms of growth, the economy grew by about 17% during this period, these first 5 years for the first development plan, in the mid-70s to early 80s.
Okay.
So during that time, the economy grew by 17% cumulatively.
Wow.
Meaning if you add it, it will be about 17%, which was a very good, how to call it, trend. And then we came to the ERP. The ERP happened because the first development plan and the second development plan were a little bit ambitious because they had higher targets. Development expenditure was raised quadruple times in the case of the first development plan. And that brought in macroeconomic instability. So by 1984-85, there were signals that the economy was in trouble. These signals included, among other things, the fact that the government was unable to service its debt. So we went on a default, what we call default, yes. Because it's like I owe you some money, you are supposed to pay me, but because you are bankrupt, you cannot pay me. So that is what we call default. So the government went into default. The fiscal deficit was very high. The current account deficit, they were also very high. There were a lot of controls, shortages of goods, and et cetera, et cetera. So this is, in fact, when justification was made for the ERP to be introduced. That is the Economic Recovery Program. The Economic Recovery Program, of course, as you know, is like a shock therapy. It's introduced to make sure that you bring macroeconomic stability. Now, macroeconomic stability goes with, bringing in macroeconomic stability goes with a lot of reforms. Introducing fiscal discipline, that is, government has to make sure that its revenues and expenditures, there is a match because you should not spend more than what you don't have. And then other reforms included introducing the flexible exchange rate, making sure that instead of government participating in the economy as the main stakeholder or as the main player, it diminishes its role and allows the private sector to take over. So that's where also we start hearing this private sector-led growth. So the ERP was successful in bringing in macroeconomic stability. There was growth for some time, but then it failed also in one area because that was the beginning of the failure of the agricultural sector.
Wow.
Because the subsidies and
that
other
was which year?
That is between 1985 to around 90. That was the ERP. Because what it did was it stopped subsidizing for fertilizer so that the farmers can get fertilizer at cheap price. And then also not only fertilizer, but inputs in general, agricultural inputs, meaning even the seeds. Because sometimes when you have a drought, for instance, government will come and give you seed at a lower price. So all those subsidies stopped. And that had affected agricultural production. Up to date now, I think we have not yet fully recovered from that. So PRSP 2 and the first development plan were the most successful plans the country has ever implemented because of few reasons. One, there was a lot of resources available, external and internal, as well as the fact that also there was conducive domestic and external environment. Meaning, for instance, now you have COVID, for instance. COVID, it can be treated as an external issue because it came from outside and it is affecting us negatively. So what we are saying is, for development to happen, for plans to be successfully implemented, you should not have so much negative external consequences influencing the economy. But also domestic, you should have also favorable domestic conditions. For instance, in the case of Gambia, You should not have drought, for instance. If you have drought, it affects your agricultural sector, and then it affects your growth. So you should have both favorable conditions for external and internally and externally for plans to be successfully implemented.
Yeah.
But of course, resources is also crucial. And this is why PRSP1 and PRSP2 were very, no, not PRSP2 and Force Development Plan were very successful. When it comes to in policies, legal frameworks, and other things, it is PRSP1 and the ERP. That was when we did most of our reforms, the biggest reforms in the economy, happen also in terms of legislations, because during the PRSP2, that was the time when, how to call it, PRSP1, sorry, that was the time when GRA Act, that's the Gambia Revenue Authority Act, was promulgated. That was the time when the Budget Management and Accountability Act was promulgated. So there were a lot of good laws, Central Bank Act. All those things were promulgated during that time. So in terms of achievements, PRSP1 and ERP will be the highest achievers in terms of reforms.
Wow.
But in terms of meeting targets that were set, PRSP2 and the Force Development Plan will take that price.
Important. Yes. Just finally, I know our time is up, but I just want you to, of course, tell us who are the main target of this book, and also where can they get this book? Very important, because probably they are watching and they might want to read this book.
Yes, when I was writing the book, my intention was for it to reach everywhere it can. And it's also applicable in most instances to policymakers, planners, researchers, politicians, university, academia, and a whole host of other things. The experience is in Gambia, but it does not necessarily mean that it's not relevant for other countries. It's very relevant for other countries. And I give you an example. In the launching of the book, one of the good things that came out of it is that the UN Institute, IDEP, in Dakar, will be using the book now as a reference material.
Wow.
Yes, and then they are also planning to, how to call it, sensitize, use the findings, conclusions also to make sure that they sensitize key stakeholders in the sub-region and across to other parts of the world also. So it's available. It's available at Timbuktu.
Timbuktu.
And then Fuladu Printers is just next door here.
Yes.
Your neighbors.
Yes, I know. I know my dad.
and then it's also published on the Amazon.
Okay.
So you can get it on Amazon.
Oh.
The website is kdp.amazon.com. Yes, you just type the name and the title of the book and my name.
Amazing.
It will come.
Now civil society organizations that wants to understand more about first Gambian economic development, and other organizations that are around, of course, NGOs, the government, this book is very important. I personally will tell you, so many people will tell me that we don't have the habit to read books. But let me tell you, it's better we start developing that. I think it is right time for Gambians to start developing reading books. Because once you read books, you gain knowledge. And this knowledge that you gain, it helps you, it helps your society, it helps your economy. And that is very important. So on that note, PS?
So can I just conclude
by
saying
of course.
one thing?
That's why I'm coming.
You remember there was this problem of viability of the country.
Yes.
But now I want to address that also, and the book has touched on that. Now you're talking of a GDP of about 1.7 billion.
GDP,
yes.
gross domestic product.
Yes. Population going around 2.4 million people. The budget is also mostly funded from domestic sources, although there is still a high component of external funding on the national budget.
Wow.
So then the how to call civil service now is entirely run by Gambians, of course.
Wow.
although we are still lacking behind in commerce, because still you have some foreign elements dominating that part of it.
Exactly.
So the question of whether the Gambia is viable or not viable has been now permanently addressed. Nobody can question whether Gambia is viable now. And we have a fledgling also democracy, as demonstrated by the recently concluded polls and the previous ones. So at least these are good indications of a nation state and that the Gambia is also a viable country.
Thank you very much, PS. We really thank you for coming. And of course, people that are watching, importantly, of course, this show is all about breaking the glass. And let me tell you, he has break the glass. PS, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me, and I will want to use the occasion to thank the GRTS management also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, of course, viewers will allow PS to, of course, leave the studio, but let me tell you this. He's with us. He's part of the Gambia. He's contributing his quota when it comes to national development, and that's what this show is all about. We'll bring in, of course, Tima to tell us what are the hammers that he used to break the glass. Next. Of course, viewers, once again, like I said, PS has break the glass. And let me tell you, today he break the glass with one. Let me start with number one. Demise, alternatives, and rebates of planning. That's the book. The book itself, Break the Glass. Tell us more.
Yes, Baba, I was so excited when he was talking. I didn't even want it to end, but he used the first hammer was patience, because he said he was writing this book since independence.
Let's say it's number two, because I already said number one.
Really? So, okay, the second one is research, because I just read the beginning of the book and I got a lot of information from it, and I can't wait to continue. So he did a lot of research in the book and a lot of hard work as well, because it's not easy to write a book for at least 10 years. And he's a very generous person. I always say writers are the most generous people, because they are the only people that are willing to share, to sit in a corner of their house and say all the knowledge they have in the paper for someone else to learn from. So he's generous and he's a patriot
Yes,
individual.
of course. I said people have to contribute to national development, and he has done that. He break the glass, but also contribute to national development, which is very, very important, because this book itself will add a lot of value when it comes to our national development. On that note, before I conclude, I want to thank MoHERST Morr Secka, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Higher Education, for contributing his quota when it comes to national development on his position, and also taking his, of course, other time to write such a book and using those hammers to break the glass. Very important. Now, to the Gambian people, you see me wearing this. Let me tell you, Gambia is ours. Gambia is here to stay. Nothing can divide it. It is me and you that are family. It is me and you that can take this country forward. So therefore, we are one, and that's what matters. So let's wear our Gambian hat to show that there is no tribe. We are one people. And that is a message that we should carry wherever we are. Gambia is lying in a very beautiful place, the smiling coast. Why? Because we always smile to beauty and peace. So let us not allow anybody to divide us, because we are one. I'm a Gambian, and that's my tribe. I love the Gambia, and that's my country. I will contribute to the Gambia, and that's my mission. And I will make sure that I complete that mission to make sure that it is developed. And that's what we call progress. On that note, I hope I also break the glass. Thank you so much.